Is being disabled a fault? Never. It should not be forgotten that every individual is a candidate for disability. The main fault is to ignore the disabled. The existence of the phenomenon of having a disability is almost as old as human history. Since the earliest periods of history, the negative attitudes of society towards disabled people have significantly affected the benefit of disabled people from health and education services. We can say that with the historical change, the approach of societies to the disabled also differs. As time progresses, it is seen that there is a positive differentiation in parallel with scientific, technological, and cultural developments. In times of the polytheistic religions and paganism, a family having a disabled child meant that the family was punished by the gods for a crime they committed. Because helping a person with disability meant attracting God's wrath. No one helped the disabled. They were driven out of the city and left to die alone. In the following periods, it was seen that the disabled people were not destroyed, but they were employed in bad jobs. The disabled, who were despised and humiliated, were put to work in the mills and water tanks instead of animals, and used in prostitution and begging. In some societies, they were forced to live in the same colony with lepers. Unfortunately, in the early days of the modern Turkish Republic, people with disabilities faced difficulties. Fortunately, disabled people who were not actually forced to work in bad jobs in Turkey, they were not pushed out of the city, but they were forced to live in isolation from the world, even in big cities, due to their physical disabilities. They were condemned to watch all the visible beauties of the world through glass windows. Public transportation vehicles, shopping malls, sidewalks, parks, cinemas, public buildings, schools, and many other places that we cannot count, prevented the disabled person from communicating with the world and the society. This situation also made it difficult for them to be employed. From the founding of the Republic until 2002, there was a profile of disabled people who were illiterate, had a low level of education, could not be employed because they could not read and could not work naturally, did not even have social security, and were poor. These people were already suffering a lot because of their disadvantaged position in social life. There are two reasons why they couldn't go out to the streets in Turkey. First, cities were just as dangerous and seriously incalculable to people with disabilities as a complete jungle. A citizen with a physical disability had to constantly ask for someone's help to get up and down from the sidewalks knee-deep in the streets. Visual impaired citizens, on the other hand, considered going out to the streets as a torture because of pits, poles, and some unexpected indentations. For the hearing of impaired citizens, on the other hand, unruly traffic, uncalculated irregular transportation vehicles could cause an accident at any time. The second reason why disabled citizens could not go out on the street was the instinct of protection. First of all, there was a problem in society's view of disabled people. Disabled people were seen as useless, just appearing and existing, disrupting the natural flow of things. Therefore, the families of disabled citizens would not leave their children, siblings, or relatives on the streets in order to protect them. In the past, if a disabled citizen in Turkey sought his right, for example, if he wanted to enter a market like the others, or cross a pavement made narrow with tables, chairs, and parked cars, he could hear the following words from behind. "Brother, stay at home. What are you doing on the street like that?" Even more hurtful will be the feeling of pity. Alas, poor man, who knows how hard his life is. And in the continuation of this, as a manifestation of a kind of compassion, for example, if he is a wheelchair-bound person, someone might come and try to push him. Of course, purely for help. They lived under the protection of their families and narrow circles. In fact, when we look at the official figures, the number of disabled citizens in Turkey was quite high in the past. Well, can you imagine the society waste caused by inability to reintegrate so many people into the society? If disability was not seen as the first obstacle to being connected to society without any justification in the past, these people could take part in the production and consumption processes. They could get education as much as their disability allows. They could work and live without feeling useless and unnecessary, without being a burden to others and the society in general. The main difference is in the society's point of view towards the disabled. Now in Turkey, and in the thoughts of Turkish society, being disabled is a situation that can be technically overcome with some tools and precautions. This is not only a duty that will relieve the society in economy and social terms, but also a moral and ethical tax that the society cannot get rid of. That is why Turkey finds, developed, and if necessary, purchase the necessary auxiliary tools and put them at the disposal of citizens with disabilities. Thus, it can bring back disabled citizens who constitute a substantial part of the society back to life. Futures in 2002 was also a year of reform for disabled citizens in Turkey. For the first time, a disabled deputy entered the Turkish Grand National Assembly, and in 2003, the private sector was obliged to employ disabled people. In 2005, the disability law came into force. Penal provisions have been introduced for discriminatory practices that disabled people are exposed to. In 2010, home care services for disabled citizens started. In this part of our documentary, we will explain all the developments implemented for disabled citizens and many regulations for them. Then, let's start with the first time a disabled citizen entered the parliament as a deputy in 2002. For a disabled deputy to enter the parliament for the first time, it means that someone who has personally experienced the problem of disabled citizens can speak in the parliament. For example, in the meeting held in the Grand National Assembly of Turkey on the occasion of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a disabled parliamentarian represented the disabled for the first time. The state was already opened cadres for disabled citizens to work in the public sector. But the private sector was making people with disabilities suffer from job opportunities. In order to prevent this, it has been made compulsory to employ disabled citizens in the private sector since 2003. With the amendment made in the Article 30 of the Labor Law, numbers 4857, the private sector was also obliged to employ disabled people. According to the data of the General Directorate of Service for Disabled and Elderly, the number of disabled people working in public and private sectors was around 45,000 in 2002, and it exceeded 100,000 by the end of 2015. The year 2005 is almost a turning point for disabled citizens because discriminatory practices against disabled citizens were penalized. The law on disabled people, numbers 5378, was published in the official newspapers and entered into force. The law not only regulated disabled citizens' access to all kinds of public services, but also introduced a criminal provision for discriminatory practices against disabled people for the first time. In 2006, a regulation on the creation and implementation of the Turkish Sign Language System was published. With this policy, which was developed to carry out documentation studies on sign language, to develop education tools and equipment, and to train sign language teachers and interpreters. It was ensured that hearing impaired citizens could tell their problems and understand what was being said. The United Nations Convention on the Disabled, which is important in terms of protecting the rights of the disabled according to the international standard, was ratified by the Grand National Assembly of Turkey in 2008, consisting of a total of 50 articles. This convention imposes obligations on the states that are party to eliminating discrimination against the disabled and raising their living standards. In 2010, Home Care Support Services, a new service model in the field of disabled care service, was launched. With this application, it was decided to provide care at home by caregiver staff to be appointed by the ministry. If a disabled citizen in need of care requests it. On May 3, 2013, expressions such as cripple and rotten were removed from the national legislation. A new regulation has been made for expressions that label disabled citizens as inadequate and have offensive counterpart. With the regulation, expressions such as crippled and rotten were removed from the national legislation. They were replaced by the generally accepted term disabled. As a result of policies developed since 2002, looking at the statistics in 2018, it is seen that the employment of disabled people exceeded to 150,000. According to these data, the number of disabled civil servants working in the public sector exceeded to 55,000, and the number of disabled workers working in the private sector exceeded the level of 95,000. By 2019, it was seen that this figure approached 200,000. It was necessary to take advantage of the benefits of developing technology. That's why in 2020, the Ministry of Interior of Turkey created Disabled 112 for hearing and speech impaired citizens aged 65 and over with chronic illness. Thus, disabled citizens have become able to report all their needs with a simple phone application. The President, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, declared 2020 as the year of accessibility for all institutions to carry out their work according to the determined standards, to ensure physical, digital, and mental transformation in this field, and to create a culture of accessibility. The Accessibility Evaluation Model, IZEV, was implemented in order to make all cities fully accessible to disabled citizens and to increase their participation in social life. IZEV aimed to raise awareness about accessibility and to easily identify the necessary regulations for accessibility. While the number of Hope Houses that allowed disabled people to socialize increased to 153, the number of people benefiting from these houses increased to 880. The number of daycare centers used by 931 disabled people increased to 127. In addition, 8,240 disabled people are provided with services in 104 official residence care and rehabilitation centers, and more than 28,000 disabled citizens stay in 292 private disabled care centers. Especially in the last 19 years, we talked about the activities and development for disabled citizens. We talked about the implementation of important support mechanisms in many areas, from education to health, from employment to accessibility, so that the disabled can exist more in the society and contribute to the society as productive individuals. One of the areas where significant progress has been made in the last 19 years has been the field of employment, which is one of the most important support mechanisms for people with disabilities. According to the data of the ministry, while the number of disabled people employed as civil servant was 5,777 in 2002, this number increased to 60,432 as of April 2021.
Ben daha önceki yıllarımda marka danışmanlığı konusunda uzun yıllar sektörde geçirmiş birisiyim. Son 5 sene, 6 sene, gönüllülükle 7 sene civarında IZEV İstanbul Zihinsel Engelliler için Eğitim ve Dayanışma Vakfı sosyal farkındalık projelerine gönüllü olarak başlamış. Şimdi vakfın başkanı olarak 3. senemde devam ediyorum. Olabildiğince de bu alanda hem özel gereksinimli bireyleri desteklemek hem de onların Türkiye adına sosyal marka olması yönünde çok çalışma yapmaya gayret eden birisiyim şu anda. Kurulduğu dönemde tabii ülkemizde çok fazla bu alanda iştigal eden vakıf ya da dernek çok fazla olmadığı için İZEV genelde yaptığı faaliyetlerde hep ilkleri başlatmaya çabalayan, ilk özel eğitim okulunu açan bir vakıftır. Mesela şu anda yayınladığımız bir dil kılavuzumuz var. Bu kılavuz İZEV tarafından çıkartılan bütünleştirici dil ve konuşma kılavuzu. Bu kılavuz hem yöneticilerin hem karar vericilerin hangi dilde hangi kelimeleri kullanması ya da kullanmamasını içeren bir kılavuz. Niye çok önemli? Bundan 20 yıl önce sakat, özürlü gibi kelimeler kullanılan bir ülkede artık İZEV'in de mesela bizim de çok misyon olarak belirlediğimiz bir şey. Biz engelli kavramını o zamanlarda daha vakıf söylemeye başladığında toplumun %80'i sakat, özürlü diye konuşuyordu. Valla eskiden zaten çok fazla bu alanda farkındalık olmadığı için zor bir süreç olduğunu düşünüyorum. Daha eskileri yani sakat dediğin adama nasıl yardım edin? Yani sakat diye zaten öteliyorsun. Özürlü diye hayatın dışına atıyorsun. Aslında Türkiye şartlarına baktığımız zaman bir avantajımız var bizim. O avantajda ne? Çocuklar hayatın içinde olmak için fırsat kolluyorlar. Avrupa Birliği ya da benzeri kurumlar çocukları hayatın içine nasıl sokarız diye araştırma yapıyorlar. Bizde zaten pek çok çocuğumuz metroya da biniyor, sokağa da çıkıyor. Sadece burada toplumun bilinç seviyesini onu karşılayacak yere getirmemiz lazım. Günümüz itibariyle de Türkiye özel gereksinimli bireyleriyle bu geçtiğimiz sene, önceki senelerde çok önemli madalyalar kazandırdı ülkemizi. Bunun ben çok büyük bir başarı olduğunu düşünüyorum. Bugün bir vakıf başkanı olarak bakanımıza gidip biz sosyal marka için Amerika'ya gideceğiz dediğimde bizi hemen muhatap alıp hemen yola çıkartmasının çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyorum. Biz vakıf olarak ya da özel gereksinimli bireyleri temsil eden bir vakıf olarak bir kuruma, kamu kurumuna ya da belediyeye ya da başka bir yere gittiğimizde çok kapının açıldığını düşünüyorum. Türkiye adına çok önemli olduğunu düşündüğüm şey 4-5 sene önce Sanat ve Biz adı altında bir proje başlattık. Bu proje niye çok önemli? Dünyadaki en önemli ressamların eserlerinin yeni versiyonlarını yaptık biz. Bu versiyonlarda ne var? Down sendromlu Mona Lisa var, İnci Küpeli Kız var, Caravaggio var, Rembrandt var. Bu tabloların hepsi bizim sergimizde 12 tane tablomuz var ve bu tabloların hepsi yeni versiyonuyla orada ve çok başarılı bir teknik uygulamayla yaptık bunu. Efsane grup Pink Floyd'un Another Brick in the Wall gibi efsane bir şarkısını Facebook alamıyor iken Türkiye'den İZEV Vakfı'na veriliyor olması bence büyük bir gurur. Çünkü biz Another Brick in the Wall'u tarihinde ilk defa Türkçe olarak yapıp bunu özel gereksinimli bireylere atfederek yeni bir klip yaptık ve Roger Waters'tan da teşekkür ve tebrik maili aldım.
Biz duramayız. Sadece farklıyız ama hayattayız.
Hayır, hayır, hayır.
Duvarları yıkın çünkü biz de varız.
Especially in the last 19 years, we talked about the activities and development for disabled citizens. We talked about the implementation of the important support mechanism in many areas, from education to health, from employment to accessibility, so that the disabled can exist more in the society and contribute to the society as productive individuals. One of the areas where significant progress has been made in the last 19 years have been in the field of employment, which is one of the most important support mechanisms for people with disabilities. In this section, we have explained in detail how disabled citizens are integrated into the society in today's Turkey. how they are provided with job opportunities, and how they receive the necessary education, and how they can experience the beauties of Turkey up close, not from their homes. In the process from 2002 to the present, with the help of technology, the obstacles in front of disabled citizens have been removed, and efforts will continue to be removed from now on. In the light of this information, I have that there has been a positive development in the perspective towards people with disabilities. Remember, being disabled is not a fault. It is ignoring these people